Hi, I'm the Margu, and welcome to my YouTube channel where I spout writing tips, opinions about writing and written works for anyone who wants to hear it, really. So without further ado, today's topic is writing an autistic character. If you follow me on Amino, you likely know I have a post on there about my do's and don'ts for writing an autistic character. That's on my young authors, all my books and writing Amino. I'm not on a huge amount of others, or at least not. Those are the only two I'm on regularly. So I'm also called the Margo on there if you want to look me up. Anyway, so you can consider this my tips for writing an autistic character extended edition. Now, my first point is something that I'm always going to talk about anytime I'm talking about writing a character. Make sure they are just as diverse as the rest of your cast. Now, I'm not just talking about BAME and queer diversity, though those are also tremendously important. I also mean diversity of character. Like, I recently got a comment, it was a post on Mary Sue's, and they were asking if a character having a mental disorder lessened their Mary Sue-ness, which it doesn't really, because you shouldn't be using their disorder in place of a personality. They should still be, you know, getting the same rigorous treatment of fleshed out flaws, weaknesses, likes, dislikes, their main goal in life, no matter what other traits they have. Anyway, on the topic of using it in place of a personality, there's something very important we need to cover. Autism isn't a fun quirk or a different way of thinking. Autism is a real problem for many people, myself included, and it's important that you portray it as such. Now, while there are a lot of ways that autism isn't very fun, that doesn't mean you should spend the whole book talking about those problems. That would be a problem on its own, but I'll get into that later. For now, let's cover why this in specific is problematic. The most obvious reason is that you aren't representing your audience correctly. Autism comes with bad stuff, and you need to represent that. But on a deeper level, for every work published that puts autism down as just a different way of thinking or a quirk, that means another person who isn't going to see it as a big deal. Someone comes up to them and says they're autistic, go, oh yeah, no, you don't need any help, that just means you think differently. But no, a lot of autistic people do need help. And there's nothing wrong with that, and you need to represent that. Anyway, this is also used alongside people who try and romanticize autism, and you should know that romanticizing something that is a real problem for real people is never a good idea. Thirdly, not all of the autistic characters' problems and not their entire character arc should be based around their autism. This is something a lot of people fail to understand for some reason, but autistic people are more than just autistic. Autistic people each come with their own problems and flaws outside of their autism. And in terms of problems, yes, autism does cause some problems, like, you know, not being able to go to certain places that other people, or do certain things that other people find easy. But it isn't the root cause for all of our problems, it just affects how we deal with things. A great example of what you should never ever 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 do is the curious incident of the dog in the nighttime. Now, spoilers ahead, major, but it's a terrible book, so. Now, in this book, the main character is constantly bullied for his autism or things related to his autism, which puts on shaky ground already, although, you know, not enough to sink the book. You know, it could be done well, like in Power Rangers, where it's mentioned at the beginning and, you know, you see him being bullied, and it's referenced a few times, but it's not the main focus of his character. But, you know, it's mentioned because, yeah, autistic people are likely to get bullied. Fun fact of life. Anyway, so, wait for it. It gets worse. Next up, we have his mother being dead, which is alright, actually. This is a problem which is a main focus throughout the book, so. But it's not directly linked to his autism. At least the main problem in the book isn't caused by his autism. Right? Right? Wrong. It turns out that his mother is alive. She left because his autism was too much for her to handle. only continues to get worse. I could spend an entire video talking about all the ways this book messes up handling autism. And I probably will, but for now that's all I need. When you have all of their problems focused around their autism, you ingrain the idea that their autism is nothing but a burden to them and everyone around them, and that only bad things come out of it, and it's the only bad thing in their life. Which isn't true, trust me. Autism is very low on the list of big problems in my life. The second issue comes in if you're autistic. Never want to read another book written by an autistic person talking about the struggles of an autistic person. I just don't. Anyway, my point is, if you're autistic and you're going down and going, yeah, I want to write a book about an autistic character, and I want to write about all the struggles they have with a neurotypical world, that sounds like a fine concept. Except you're autistic. And no offense, but no thank you. Just have a casually autistic lead. Please, I beg of you. We've had enough books focused around all the problems our autism causes. Not enough of that. You also shouldn't have all your characters' flaws centered around their autism. That's just basic. So say you've got a character who's loud and talks and speaks without thinking, that's what I was going to say. That sounds fine, but when you go to the root, they're both based around their autism. So loud, autistic people have, you know, noise control issues. Speaks without thinking is a common misconception because autistic people don't get the same social cues that autistic people do, so don't realise that some of the things we're saying aren't supposed to be said. So it's common, so if all of your flaws are based around their autism or common autistic tropes and stereotypes, consider adding in some more flaws or changing some flaws to things that aren't related to their autism. Like, say maybe they're reckless. One of my favourites that I'm doing for a character is that they don't give second chances. I'm really looking forward to writing that character. And you know, there's lots of flaws out there that aren't related to autism. Like, it's okay if you have overlap. Like, I've got autistic characters who are loud, I've got autistic characters who don't think when they speak, but they have other flaws to balance it out. Okay, so next up is one of the biggest ways you can possibly screw up an autistic character. So, you should never try to cure them. Yeah, sounds obvious, right? But autism isn't a disease, we don't want to be cured, don't call autism a disease, and don't try and cure it. So, a lot of people do this without realising too. So, I was on the Autistic amino, and someone was saying something about a book they read which was really awful. I seem to have repressed the name, but there was this autistic girl and there was this guy, and she didn't like to be touched. And there was this guy who wanted to touch her, so he kept touching her anyway. Already ringing alarm bells. Until he wore her down and she no longer minded being touched. No. So, don't try and get rid of your autistic character's traits. Don't do it. Have other characters respect your autistic characters. That's all there is to it. Just respect their boundaries. Anyway, respecting their boundaries is a different section. I'll get to that. Great, this is another big point. Don't do the Sheldon Cooper stereotype. This is the most common type of autistic character I see. Although the worst example is actually the Curious Incident of the Dog in the Night Time. Not Sheldon Cooper, but Sheldon Cooper's the well-known, oh yeah, he's autistic. Basically, the Sheldon Cooper stereotype is where you have a character who's bad at social interactions, often referred to as robotic, or inhumane because of this. They'll also be a super genius, because all autistic people are geniuses. We know that. That's a rock fact. They will also be a control freak who has to have everything their way. Now, there are so many reasons this is harmful, but for now I'm just... don't do it. Please. This isn't to say that you can't have an autistic character who's bad at social interactions and also smart. But that's an entirely different topic. That's difficult to get into. Another video. It just means you're walking on fucking eggshells. We need an actual representation, not a copy and paste of autism stereotypes from Google. Next up, autism's a spectrum. A lot of people don't get this. They say, oh, they're autistic, that means you must have all of these traits. Oh wait, you don't have one of them? You're lying about being autistic, right? I want to punch that person in the face. But that is basically everyone, because people don't get that autism's a spectrum. You don't have to have all of those things. Bear in mind when you're making your character that they don't have to exhibit every single trait of autism that there is. Now, I know people are going to try and use this to do awful things, so I have to clarify. This doesn't mean you can leave out the bad stuff. But you just said it's a spectrum, so I can do what I want, right? Fuck you. No. There are still certain traits that are universal. Like, I don't know a single autistic person who doesn't have some level of sensory issues, or isn't entirely sure what to do in social situations, or some level of anxiety. The list goes on. Yes, people have different tipping points and recovery rates, but that doesn't mean they aren't all there on some level. Now, this one should be easy. This is a less heavy topic. Include the little things. You don't just look at the biggest parts of autism and call it autistic. Think of it more like a relationship. There are little details that make it. So, for example, because you might not be familiar with them, here are some things for you to think about. What is your character's special interest? Does it change throughout the book? Do they have one? Do they gain one in the book? What is their favourite way of stimming? Are they a pressure stimmer, an audio stimmer, a taste stimmer, touch stimmer? There are so many ways to stim. They can be multiple types of stimmers. I stim in so many ways. Do they like slime? They hate slime. Do they have any objects they stim with, like an eraser or a ring or a rock? Comfort foods, any foods they cannot eat, any comfort items. How easily do they get excited to flapping and stimming and screeching level? How public are they about their stimming? All of these little things will bring your autistic character to life and just make them more relatable and realistic. Just throwing in the awful line about their stimmer ring or an eraser that they carry with them at all times and it rubbed to death. You know, I lost my stim ring yesterday, or my favourite eraser, and people know that you've put more thought into it. This one's a real quick point. Don't use high functioning and low functioning. Some people are fine with these terms, but a lot of people hate them, and there is a lot of stigma behind them, etc., but I'm not getting into that. But my point is, by using them, you're then going to isolate half of your target audience. And it's not going to hurt you not to use them, so just avoid them. Oh, but how can I express what type of autism they are? Like, they can speak, have them speak, maybe? Let's call them autistic, and we'll get that they're autistic, and we can pick up the different nuances of their autism throughout the book, without you having to use labels that autistic people hate. Now, on to this point. How about the characters respect your character's autism? This is really easy to do. If an autistic character doesn't like to be touched, don't touch them. If an autistic character can't handle loud noises, have other characters go out of their way to not put them in loud situations. Now, here are two acceptable ways to deal with characters who don't respect these boundaries. Punch them in the face / kill them off, depending on what kind of book you're writing. Or have them go on some kind of minor character arc, realising that that was wrong of them, and they're learning to be better. A great example of this is in Heroes of Olympus. Mild spoilers ahead. So, there's a character in these books called Nico D'Angelo. You probably know of him if you know the fandom at all. He is very autistic. Anyway, that's another different point entirely. He's not canonically autistic, but autistic as fuck. So, at one point in the book, a character grabs his hand and afterwards he's like, never do that again, I don't like being touched. And the other characters are like, oh shit, sorry, yeah. Anyway, and they could leave it there, except book 5 comes up. This is one of the most important scenes ever to me. This is one of the most important chapters ever to my very soul, for so many reasons. But one of them is this. That's fantastic! Dude! Jason opened his arms for a hug, then froze. Right. no touching, sorry. One book to the next, he's made an arc from grabbing his hand to, oh yeah, right, no touching. Amazing. Sorry, I'm very happy. I love this. I love these books so much. Another small point, next up, importance though. Not all autistic people are asexual. I have no idea where the stereotype comes from, despite living it. But it's just not true, okay? You can have an autistic person who is asexual, but whatever you do, don't make the jump from, hey, they're autistic, they've got to be asexual. Not true. Now, almost at the end here, make sure you aren't erasing autistic traits because it's convenient for the writing or plot of the book. Okay? If you've established that they hate loud noises, don't have them go to a party and enjoy it because you really need them at this party. I can forget for just one chapter, right? You can't. And yeah, I get it could make some scenarios more difficult, but we're writers. We should be thriving on restrictions. If you can't write around a restriction, then oh boy, you're going to be having difficulty being a writer. Now, make sure you support autistic people in real life. Don't support Autism Speaks, don't use the puzzle piece logo, and actually be good to autistic people. It's not hard. If you're ever unsure about something about your autistic character, you should always ask an actually autistic person. I, for one, always open to help with anything like writing related, although I sometimes take forever to reply. I'm awful with communication like that. Now, if you've watched this video and you think that all of this seems like a lot of effort, and you no longer want to write an autistic character, then that's okay. I'm not going to force you into writing a character that you don't want to write. But I do have to leave you with the one very important point. Don't autistic code. If you decided not to write the autistic character, don't still code them to be autistic and not call them autistic. People will still call out them as being autistic. You'll still be held for the same thing. So yeah, if you're writing an autistic character, even if you're not saying it, you've got to be prepared to commit. Make sure to call them autistic character in the book. And in good words, treat them like they are your child. If you're not prepared to have a child yet, don't have a child. But if you choose to have a kid, you gotta make sure you're ready to be a parent. There are no excuses. So if you're unsure if an autistic character is well done, then once again, ask an autistic person. Feel free to even ask me, though, as I said before, terrible at communication, and also I'm a very harsh critic. And don't forget to do your research. Research is always important. There are a million things about autism that I can't go into in this video. If you don't have a good idea of how autism works and how it affects your character, then you're going to be running into walls throughout the entire writing process, and misrepresentation. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, then hit that like button up, leave a comment, subscribe if you want to see more. It would mean the world to me. Also, if you have any requests or ideas for future videos, hit me up. I'm always open for suggestions, so long as they're on topic. And I will hopefully see you next week.